What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the channel and welcome to another one of my 2026 season previews, where today we're going to be talking about the Denver Broncos. Now, if you haven't seen one of these videos before that I've done, basically I'm going to go through a review of the offense and defense from 2025, as well as the additions and departures for 2026, get into some storylines for each side of the ball, and then finally end off with the schedule and record predictions for 2026. Starting off with the offense, now even though this wasn't the squad that was absolutely high powered, this still was a team that was very efficient. You look at the fact that Bo Nix was first in the NFL in terms of passing attempts, and you look at the fact that scoring wise this team was 14th. It kind of makes you believe that they didn't score as much as they should have, but I think this team still was pretty efficient. They were 14th in scoring, but they scored on almost 40% of their drives. While that's 20th in the NFL, that's still good enough considering the fact that they had probably the best defense in the NFL last year. This was a very complimentary offense, and it was a team that was able to run the ball, pass the ball. They were really able to do whatever they wanted. They just didn't do it at an extremely high level. However, it does look like adding a level of explosiveness is what Denver wanted to do this postseason. They trade for Miami receiver Jalen Waddle. They traded away a first-round pick, third-round pick, and fourth-round pick in the 2026 draft to Miami to get Jalen Waddle. I think obviously a really good move. You weren't going to get a receiver that's of the caliber of Jalen Waddle if they were to stay at that first round pick that they had. I believe it was in the late 20s. They weren't going to get somebody that was even close to Jalen Waddle, even if somebody like KC Concepcion was still available, or Makai Lemon. Jalen Waddle is definitely a better receiver than both of those guys, obviously. And so getting him onto this offense when you still have Cortland Sutton, you bring back J.K. Dobbins, you have R.J. Harvey, this looks like a more complete offense around Jalen Waddle and around Bo Nix than it did last year. And that leads me into my storylines for the 2026 Broncos offense. Just how much will Jalen Waddle do? Jalen Waddle for the last few years has kind of been the forgotten man in Miami. Ever since Tyreek Hill got there, he's really been second fiddle, and I don't even know if people really think of him as that. I think towards the end of his Miami tenure, people kind of forgot about Jalen Waddle. Bo Nix is going to be returning from his ankle surgery, one that Sean Payton kind of classified as something that was going to happen. It was more of a matter of when, not if. Something that it seemed like Bo Nix refuted in the press. But either way, he's returning from ankle surgery, something that really derailed their season. And I think there's a chance that we're going to be talking about 2025 as a major what if for this team. I think the Broncos, if you put them against the Patriots with Bo Nix in that AFC Championship game, there's no way that Denver loses that game. Just from a standpoint of Bo Nix was obviously a better quarterback than Jarrett Stidham. He's a more mobile option. He's a guy that had a better grip on the offense than Jarrett Stidham did. And I think it's going to lead to some questions during 2026. Like, man, what if Bo Nix didn't get hurt? What if it was the Broncos that were going against the Seahawks in the Super Bowl last year? I think there's just going to be questions about it. Even though it's something that has nothing to do with the 2026 season and how they're playing on the field, I still think it's going to be a storyline. And now the defense. This is one of, if not the best defenses in the entire NFL from 2025. You had, absolutely stellar play from your entire secondary, not just the two guys that are on your screen, but you have Pat Surtain, Talanoa Hufanga, you have Brendan Jones, you have guys like Jaquan McMillan or Riley Moss. You just had an absolutely stellar secondary, probably the best in the entire NFL. And the Broncos really did not need to make too many additions to this team. The big addition is probably their third-round pick, Tyler Onyedim, out of Texas A&M. He's a guy, if you look at his draft profile on NFL.com, he's compared to somebody like Brandon Dorlus. And while that's not a name that many Broncos fans might know about, and it's not a name many NFL fans know of as a household name, but he's a guy for the Atlanta Falcons last year who had 8.5 sacks. If you're looking at Tyler Onyedin and you say he even gets half of that in 2026, I think it's a successful draft pick. And if he develops into somebody like Brandon Dorlus, who it gets 8+ sacks at the interior defensive line position, that's of massive value for Denver if they get him in the 3rd round. And it's pretty obvious whose spot Tyler Onyedin is projected to take, and that's John Franklin Myers, who went to the Tennessee Titans on a 3-year, $63 million deal in the offseason. Franklin Myers has been, for the last 2 years for Denver, a really solid player on that defensive line. Him, along with Jonathan Cooper and Nick Bonito, and the rest of that pass rushing group, they've been really good. They've been a big reason why the secondary has been able to make as much noise as they have, and it's going to be a big departure for him and for this team not having him there anymore. And now for my storylines for this defense. Already 2 points that I've made pretty obvious already. This is probably the best secondary in the NFL, and I think it's something that people are going to talk about throughout this season, whether it's specifically with guys like Patrick Surtain, or whether it's as a team when you include guys like Riley Moss, Brendan Jones, Jaquan McMillan. They drafted Jahdae Barron in the 1st round last year, so it looks like it's the best secondary on paper in the entire NFL. And it's going to be a storyline, I think, going through the season, just highlighting this defense and how successful they might be. The second point, something I already mentioned just a short moment ago, the departure of John Franklin Myers. Who's going to replace that? Is it going to be 3rd round rookie Tyler Onyedin out of Texas A&M? Is it just going to be an increase in production from guys like Jonathan Cooper and Nick Bonito? Or is it going to come from a different source? The third major storyline, I think that's going to be pretty talked about, whether it's just in local media or in national media, is that there's a lot of guys that this is a contract year for. Namely, you look at the secondary, who I already highlighted, guys like Brendan Jones, guys like Riley Moss, Jaquan McMillan. All 3 of these are major pieces for the Denver Broncos secondary and for the Denver Broncos defense, not just for the now, but for the potential future. And all of these guys are free agents after this season. You also look around the defense, there's other guys who are going to play impactful roles like Drew Sanders. There's going to be guys that are, again, free agents after this season. So it's going to be very important to see how they're playing throughout the year, how they, it's almost you have to compare one guy against the other, which I don't think Denver wants to do. I don't really think Denver fans want to do. I think they just want to have this really good defense for years to come and figure out deals for all of these guys. And now looking at the schedule for Denver, it's a pretty tough schedule. I mean, you look at how this season ends. You have 3 games against Buffalo, in New England, and against the LA Chargers. That alone is just a really tough way to end the year. Then you look at the beginning of the year in Kansas City to start, against Jacksonville, against the Rams, at San Francisco, at the LA Chargers, and then against Seattle in Week 6. Those 9 games, and that's not even getting into other games like, Pittsburgh on the road in Week 12 or Carolina on the road in Week 9. Those 9 games I highlighted at first. If Denver is 2-7, or if they're 3-6 in those 9 games, that could potentially wipe out their season really before it even begins. Now, looking at my season predictions for the Denver Broncos in 2026, I really think no matter what, this is a team that makes the playoffs. Whether it's a wild card spot at 5, 6, or 7, or it's one of the division winner spots 1 through 4. I think they get in. I think they're better than a lot of teams offensively in the AFC, but they are probably the best, if not top 2 or 3, with teams like Houston or whoever else you think is the best defense in the AFC. Denver is up there as well. And off of that alone, given how somewhat weak the other offenses in the AFC are, I think how strong this defense is, that could lead them to a 10-plus win season just off of that alone. So I really think floor-wise, 9-8, if things go wrong against those really good opponents, especially within the first 6 weeks or those last 3 weeks of the season that I highlighted, I still think this team gets in because they have easier games against Miami, against the Las Vegas Raiders. You know, they have those winnable games in there, sprinkled in between the tough matchups. Now, ceiling-wise, if this team defensively is as good as they were last year, or if they're even better than they were last year, again, this is a 10-plus win team just off of that strength alone. I really think 12-5 is probably where I see them because, again, they do have 9 tough games, 6 to start, 3 to end, where, you know, teams don't always get off to great starts, or they don't always end off on the best note. And when you're playing really good teams to start your year, or really good teams that are fighting for playoff contention to end the year, it really leaves you with such a minuscule margin of error. And if Denver is any worse this year than they were last year in those close games, or if they're any worse in terms of turning the ball over, in terms of, you know, they didn't really take the ball away very much last year on defense, if they're even worse at it this year, what does that look like? I think that's kind of why their ceiling isn't as high as some of the other teams that I've talked about already, because there's still a little bit, I think, offensively that might be missing, a little bit defensively that might be missing, but this still is a really good team through and through. That's going to be it for this video. Make sure you like and subscribe to the channel. Make sure you check out for future videos. I'm trying to do more than just have these season predictions be my most recent videos on the channel. I'm going to try to get some, you know, fantasy football type videos out, some videos about training camps, as those are kind of in full swing. So make sure if you have a suggestion for me on what type of video you want to see me make or hear me talk about, make sure you leave a comment down below, and I'll see you in the next video.